Let's see. La, 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 la.
Elevator music.
Okay, I'm gonna be front. I
This
don't know
chat is too much.
how do you
I think if you go next to the mute button and press the like little up thing, you should be able to select your microphone.
Yep, it was not using. Is it better?
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yay. Yeah, I mean, you all are the artists for Influence and Deconsecration, which is the first snail show. I want to say congratulations. I've gotten a lot of great feedback about the show and people responding really well to it and to the artwork. And that just feels really special. And part of the reason why I wanted to ask if you all knew each other is because I know all of you. And in my mind, like you kind of exist in the same part of my mind. And like, it's interesting that these people don't necessarily like know each other extremely well, or like may know each other, but not know their work super well. Yeah. The first thing I was kind of curious about going off of that, not knowing each other was, did any of you see each other's work and have really strong responses to what you saw?
I mean, I'll talk. Yeah, I did. I was really, it was nice seeing it on Instagram too, in the way that I was welcomed to everyone's work, like through the stream of Instagram, knowing that it was through Snail, and then I was a part of it too, and like getting a preview with the essay, which was really interesting. But yeah, it made me remember in particular, I think it was Candy, some of the things that you were saying in your work really felt like journal entries that I've had, and yeah, and like I felt like a sort of a kinship to the anger and the sarcasm in your work, Brianna. Like the use of irony and sarcasm was really like, I was like, oh, I've been there. Like, oh yeah. And this is weird. Naomieh, how do you pronounce your name actually?
Naomieh is fine.
Naomieh's fine. Okay. Just the relationship to the body. Yeah, the body as like there was something I've just been finding myself being so my body has become to represent much more than I've wanted it to. And so it was really interesting to see the body in such a different way, and to see it in the context of objects. And it was really and I just have been looking at so many fashion magazines that it was just so nice to see something that, it references fashion, but was so antithetical that I was like, oh yeah, right. I forget that you can use this kind of language in a way that's it's different. And yeah, I respect particularly, I don't know what it is, but something about the shot with the feet, with the 2 feet, that is like my favorite thing. Like I screenshot that immediately. I was like, oh shit, fuck, wait, I need this. I don't know what for. It just like, it doesn't have any kind of social or political or any, it just worked for me. I was like, oh, this works. Something about this is hitting me, and I like it. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah, Naomieh, you recently shot something for Vogue, right?
Yes, I did. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Logan.
Oh,
yes, that's what we're here for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have like an interest in like, I never even thought about making the connection to fashion before. Do you have an interest in fashion photography, or is that inspiring to your work, the style?
I did have an interest in fashion photography in high school. But I kind of I didn't care for it anymore. So no, I don't have an interest in fashion photography now, but I did in high school. I was a big fan of Richard Avedon. I mean, he was the only guy that, and Annie Leibovitz were the only two photographers shown to me in high school regarding fashion and stuff. So yeah, I try to like mimic their lighting and stuff when I was in high school.
I guess I don't want to make you like spill tea, but how did you end up? You're like, fashion's okay. How did you end up with that shoot? Also, can you move your camera down so we can see your face?
How did I end up with that shoot?
Yeah.
I randomly met this girl. She just wanted to meet me, and like we hung out. I showed her Philly. She was like, we became like cool. And then she asked me, like, she used to be a stylist for like Interview Mag, Vogue, all of those people. But she said she didn't like that life, so she wanted to make her own work, and not like, she wanted to do her own project. So she asked me, but she didn't tell me what it was for. So it was like when I found out, like, she just sent me the link, and I'm like, what's this? And I was like, bitch, why did you tell me? I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, why didn't you tell me? She's like, I don't want you to get nervous, because I like usually doubt myself a lot. And that was like, oh, like that was some big shit. But yeah, so she like we just worked on this project together. And it was really like fun. I like doing stuff like that. I don't like working, like having to work, if that makes sense.
You like having to work?
No, I don't. I like doing fun things and not having it to be an assignment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. So that's how I got it.
I feel like that person did right by you to just like have you do it and know that, and you know, that person clearly saw your brilliance and saw all of your capabilities and said, oh, I know something great's gonna come out of this, and just didn't even like let you hesitate or doubt yourself. So that was a beautiful moment.
Thank you. I was surprised. And now we're cool now. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, Zoom be making me sweat, so
You're good.
I'm like dripping sweat. I don't know if you saw the
Oh, I feel the same way. I feel like I get off Zoom feeling like I just exercised for no reason. I'm like, I'm just sitting in my chair, but there's something about like having to stare intently at my computer that I'm like, oh God.
It's not normal.
Anything.
Yeah. It's like, it's almost like it feels like it's not normal for our bodies to like be sitting like this, you know, or trying to like build connections with people through a screen. So I think we do work harder, like in trying to build community this way.
I was just listening to a thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, I like FaceTiming my friends and talking shit, but for some reason Zoom makes me sweat.
Context, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I was reading a thing or listening to a thing from a somatics person who deals with what's called organic intelligence. So it's thinking of somatics from an evolutionary perspective and how other organisms embody, because they don't deal with our problems. And so like evolutionarily we embody usually through the outer world. Like we don't need to look in, because we don't have that, at least from what we can interpret, there isn't that same relationship to the inner. They don't have the same kind of inner anxieties other organisms that we can ascertain. Some organisms do. You can depress a dog, you know. You actually can. It's sad, you know. But one of the things that the person talked about was with Zoom, that she teaches her clients to actually take the time while you're talking on Zoom, or if you're like in the Zoom space, to actually orient to the space around you, like in the room. And to not be afraid, even in the call, to be like, I actually just need to get up and like move the computer, just to remember that this is a computer, and to remember, because there's an organism that's having experience, and then there's our story that's trying to like do the duties of the drama of you know, the social life, and they're not always in the same page, and it's nice to kind of, you know, bring them together. So anyways, that was like something I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Something something that you said, Naomieh, thinking about, like you were saying, it didn't feel like work, like, because it was fun. Brianna, now it's your turn to be on the spot.
I knew it was coming as soon as you said fun.
Fun. Well, yeah, I mean, I know not everything you do is comedy oriented, but I know a lot of what you do is comedy oriented. And I was really curious, what is the process of creating things that are supposed to be funny? And then how, in what ways is that work? You know, I've never attempted to do something funny on purpose at that level, so I really have no idea.
Can you say the first part of that question again? I forgot by the time we got to the end.
I think what I probably said was, what is the process of being funny, or something like that?
That's a good question. It's actually interesting because I think like in 2019, I did a lot of sketch, which was definitely a lot of like writing by myself, but it was essentially communal. Like I would write stuff and then bring it to a team, and then we would read drafts and then get up on stage and do it together. So it was definitely just like fun. It didn't feel like work, especially because it was sketch and not like a long play. So I could kind of like learn my lines on the bus on the way to rehearsal, and like it was, you know, just very chill, and like we weren't getting paid. It was just fun. So I didn't really like quite see it as work. Now I do because it's a pandemic and my brain can't do it. So I'm like, if you want me to write something funny, it's a job now. But so towards the end of last year, well, most of last year, my pandemic baby was a play that I wrote called Settle Down, and that felt more, it was me writing a whole play by myself, and I had, you know, people reading and stuff, but it wasn't as communal. And I definitely felt the like, okay, now I have to go in and like find the funny parts and add the funny parts and like step back from it and be like, okay, this is too dramatic, I want it to make people laugh. And I guess I got to like apply all the skills that I was like learning through doing a lot of sketch to putting it into a different thing, and that work felt different than you know, frolicking on stage and being ridiculous in ridiculous costumes. But they are both work. Yeah, I think like it's leaning into the ridiculousness and also like finding the patterns in what's funny. Like I know everyone, like a lot of people know like the rule of 3. Like if you're gonna start telling a joke, like 3 things are funny, like 2 things are but 3 things are funny. Like, you know, leaning into the patterns. I've also been watching like a lot of sitcoms in the pandemic. So I'm like, this is work. I'm studying. I'm studying. I don't really know if that answers your question, but
no, it totally does. And it actually leads to something else that I wanted to ask, and I thought maybe I would ask later, but I'll ask now, is like, because you talked about I guess like with sketch comedy, like it's so, and anytime you're doing things that like are theater oriented, it's so audience oriented. Like how does that work for your process? Like, are you kind of presenting things? And I'm sure it might be different between like sketch comedy and plays, where it's like a sketch you might present, and if it doesn't work, you're like, well, okay. But like a play, you might have more time to workshop. But I'm assuming is that really how it works for you?
The sketch that I was doing anyway, and I'm like in 2019, I can't even say last year anymore because it's so far away. It was like very quick. We definitely worked on it through rehearsal and like revised it together as we were rehearsing and putting it up. And if we revisited sketches, they were changed. Like I think the version of Ruin the Reveal that's in the gallery is not the original version that I wrote or the original version that we performed. There was another character originally, and that person moved and was no longer on the team. So then I had to merge some characters together so that we could still do it. But I completely lost my train of thought. It went somewhere. The sketch and the rehearsal. I mean, it's like, it feels definitely like lower stakes. It was like, this is fun, I think, for the play. I am grateful because in the last year I was able to have support through like a playwriting group program thing at Interact. So I was able to have consistent feedback with different drafts with professional actors coming in and reading, which was helpful. When I don't have that, there's a lot of drafts sitting on my drive that I have not so that everyone pay artists to develop work because it was definitely a lot harder to do solo. And I think the sketch, it's 3 pages versus like a 90-page script is definitely very different, but it definitely makes a difference when you have people that you regularly can meet with, and you have people supporting the development of that work. It was definitely very beneficial, because that piece would not have gotten finished in 2020 if not for that support.
Yeah, that makes me think about, Candy, the self-portraits that you're showing in Snail are from that series Mirror Talk, which you made while you were at your 40th Street Air. It's repetitive to say 40th Street Air residency. That's what I wanted to say, but
yeah.
Did you find that you had like I'm not super familiar with the residency. Did you also have like a lot of support and feedback in that process? Or was it more like you were focusing on this, and then when you had the reception, that's when you were getting all that response?
So the way that the 40th Street Air works is that you get a free studio, and Gina, bless her heart, gives you the keys. You meet once, and then that's it. And then you're there on your own for like a year, and it was kind of perfect because it was, that was after a grad school, and grad school is the opposite, right? You have people breathing down your neck forever. And I think that's a big reason why my work changed so much, is that it was like a whole year of like making work and not having anybody tell me shit about it. You can edit that out if you need to. But so and I also I'm a trained printmaker, I'm a trained paper maker, and I didn't have access to that kind of space, but I did have access to a lot of photo equipment through More, because I was the tech at the time for the print and photo studios. And so I was like, I'm sitting here with all of this equipment all day, and I can just play around and experiment. So yeah, and I was writing poetry, and I was like, oh my God, I have all of these random poems, and I have all of these random portraits, and what am I going to present for 40th Street? And anyways, I realized, I was creating these things simultaneously because they were speaking to each other. And that's when I was like, I think they need to be presented side by side. Like, of course, I hosted a poetry reading at the time, but, for the people who weren't there for that, like, I felt like they needed to experience the words and the imagery at the same time. And yeah, it was also, one of the first times that I was really direct about creating an altar in that space. So that was really interesting because I had almost everything up and everything done, and I was like, something's missing. And my friend was just like, oh, your altar's missing. And I was like, I know you're joking, because I have an altar in my house, and I, have like many portable altars that I carry with me that I think are like offerings and stuff. And I was like, I know you're joking, but you're actually right. Like, that's missing in this space. So, that was definitely an interesting experience. But those portraits, they were like me being unrestrained and free, and just like doing the things that I felt were necessary at the time.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think when we were first talking about the show, you talked about, and correct me if I'm kind of getting the wording wrong, or if you want to kind of reinterpret what I'm remembering, about altars being a space for deconsecration, which I thought was just like so amazing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I think you know, when we think of altars in this country, because of our limited understanding of, you know, different cultures, you know, a lot of people will think, especially when it comes to like Mexican folks, right? Like people will think like, oh, Day of the Dead, you know. But altars, they serve many different purposes, right? Reverence being one of them, right? Gratitude being one of them. Like my mom has had an altar for, I mean, her whole life, and her whole time being in this country. And I swear it's just like her being thankful that like she's still here, you know, because things are so uncertain for immigrants. And anyways, but I think for me, in many ways, with my work, I realized that I was definitely using um, the photography, the poetry, and then the altars as a way to reconcile my relationship with certain items and objects, or certain parts of my past and my history, right? And so I was removing the power that they had over me through this process of, you know, photographing and documenting and writing about it and creating an altar ultimately. You know, so in, you know, some of the portraits that I'm showing, I'm wearing a corset, right? Like that's a symbol of trauma that I've experienced. And, you know, by photographing and then creating that altar, like I was removing the power that they had over me. So that when you talked to me about deconsecration, I was like, oh, holy crap, that's what I've been doing with my work. What?
It's like my new favorite word. I really feel like it so perfectly talks about, yeah, just to confront something and like honor it kind of in a way, but not in a way where you're saying like, you know, my trauma made me strong, which like that's fine for people to say, but that's not for everyone to say. But you kind of get to assess it in your own way and let it go in your own way. And it also doesn't necessarily have to be trauma. It often is, but it doesn't have to necessarily. I feel like Chantel, your work, I mean, is really like, let's just go in. And then I saw an artist talk with you recently, and even in the artist talk, you're just like,
oh, you saw that thing at the
yeah.
Tyler? Oh,
surprise!
No shit. Yeah, you heard me say nigga tranny like 3 times in front of those poor kids. I was like, oh, these kids, they're in for a time, but
they'll be better off for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you in your work, you are, I feel like, so open, and obviously, you know, I'm sure you're not sharing everything, but you're so open about your past and the things that you've gone through. What kind of led you to be able to be that open in your work? I mean, was that just something you always were like, yeah, I'm just always going to talk about it? Or was there kind of like a moment where you're like, you know, I need to use this form and able to like address these things?
Oh, that's a simple question. I don't know if you can tell the sarcasm. That's a very.
I didn't for a second, and then I was like, you know what?
Oh, I think it's death. I think it's suicide. I think it's you know, it's all the real shit of being confronted. It's the thing of like, there's the animal that will do anything to survive within an order of what the environment tells you need to be. But once there's so much of you is persecuted and so much of you internally is afraid that there's no place for you, you're up against a corner, and you either make use of the world around you and try to dismantle it yourself as much as you can, or you give up or you give in to it. And I have spent so much time living behind different masks, and yeah, I think, you know, I was kicking and screaming, and nice parts of me still are, you know, to tell the truth. And it feels so much better to lie. God, it feels so good in the moment. Oh, it feels so good. But then you try to go to bed and you're tossing around, and it's like an itch on your back, and then you turn over and it's like this huge demon next to you, and you're like, oh fuck, you're still here. And it's like, yeah, bitch. And it's like, okay, you know, you gotta like just deal with it. I don't know. It's for me, it's definitely an attempt to it's the therapy problem. It's like, you can go to therapy to say you're in therapy and to say you're, oh yeah, I'm in therapy. Or you can go to therapy to actually figure out a little bit of what's going on, and knowing that there's plenty more, more, you know. And so the truth telling in the work that I'm doing, or the attempts to dive in to deconsecration, when you told me the idea, I was like, oh no shit, of course. Yes, of course. This is like, I feel like I literally feel like I was born as an act of deconsecration. and this feels very much like a predestined thing. But yeah, I don't feel like there's much use for me personally to continue being alive if I'm not doing this work. And it's that confrontation with, oh, when I'm not focusing on this and I'm not actually questioning and dismantling these ideas and offering up the reality of the experience and all of its multifaceted complexity, I'm killing myself in some way, or I'm causing more harm than good to myself. And I would be wise, if I want to stay around much longer, to start this process so that when I get there, I can have, you know, it's like exercise. It's, you know, or any of those things that require habits. It's like get in a habit of it so that it's not biting me in the ass later, you know. And it came out of a lot of trauma, as you say. It came out of a lot of, like, you know, terrible things. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where, I just don't know how to do it any other way. Like I've tried to be cool. I've tried to do the cool thing. It just doesn't work for me. I get too, get too lost. But.
It makes me think about, in my controlling intent, you mentioned a Chekhov quote, which, let me check it because I wrote it down. The quote is, if you want to work on your art, work on your life. Yeah. I kind of want to just open that up to anyone else. Like, how does that quote kind of like resonate with you? Or does it not? I don't know.
I can say something. Well, that resonates with me because the whole I guess idea, how I became, can't even speak. Let me take a breath. How I started photographing nude figures was because I was trying to remove fear from myself, and not be so afraid of seeing naked bodies, not be afraid of seeing my own body. So I kind of put myself in a room with things that like literally would make me shake, just think about all the bad things. I don't know. And out of that project, like I guess after every like, I don't know, every step I was like realizing like, oh shit, like why do I feel this way? Where is this coming from? Just like all these questions I'd ask myself. Why do I have this reaction? Is that normal? What is normal? And at that time, let me stop. Like, I have a tendency to like beat around the bush without like being so specific. But because, okay, so like I was, oh my gosh, just so much. Where do I start? I was sexually abused when I was younger by my guardian, who was, yeah, I'll leave that to tell out, but for years and years, and also physically abused by my siblings, and kind of still had to like stay in this space where all of this trauma was still happened, it still was happening, and go to school. And like I didn't know what it was. Even though I was an adult, I didn't know what rape was. I didn't know what that was until like I got to college and stuff like that. And putting myself in that room kind of like opened me up to like questioning like why I was feeling this way, and then leading me having conversations with friends letting me know like, you know, this is why you're this way, or this is why not you're this way, but this could be it, like, you know, this putting labels to things that like I was like, oh shit. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but basically that project led me like to like work on myself. And I feel like, I think someone asked me in school, one of my teachers asked me like, when you are done, or when you process your when you're like, I don't know if I think he said along the lines of, if when you're finished processing this trauma, is that when you're going to stop your work, or is that when you're going to stop making work? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that question. Or I don't know, like, it was a weird question, but he just asked me that randomly. And I was like, I don't know. Because yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but hopefully I made sense.
Yeah, like the project you're talking about, I guess to give a little bit more context, was like the photo series that you're showing in Snail, that's like of your old house.
Yes. That's of my old house. And I guess I can show you where I don't know if I gave you the photos of my very first project of doing that. I don't think I sent you that. It was just like a more this ceramic studio where it was just like that empty room in the basement. I didn't send you that one, but maybe I should have, because when you told me about Deconsecration, I automatically thought of like my house and my godmother's house, and yeah, history, tradition, culture, stuff like that. Okay, I'm done.
That's interesting that you brought up like culture, because something I realized, like after I was talking to different artists, I was like, I feel like a lot of the art, I don't know exactly for everyone's parents' details, but I think a lot of you have at least one parent who's not from America. Is that correct?
Yeah, both
Okay.
my parents are immigrants.
Right, from Haiti.
Both
Yeah,
of mine are immigrants.
Yeah, my mom's from Haiti and my dad's from Cuba.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Jamaican, Pakistan over here.
Okay. Bum, bum, bum.
Yes. Wagwan. I grew up around a whole Haitian family. Like that was like my life growing up. My best friend from when I was a kid was Haitian.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know Creole? Yeah.
A little bit of Creole, yeah. C'est pas pour that, mais je sais pas.
Okay, you speaking too fast for me, honey.
Kisa? I would just hear kisa all the time. What? Kisa?
Yeah, that means what? Kisa?
Uh-huh. Yeah, the boys in the neighborhood would be like, kisa. And it'd be like, who? Who you want me to kiss? What is it?
My two best friends and like my housemates in Philly are both Haitian. And so I only know the petty stuff, right? Like I don't like I learned French, and I know English obviously. So like whenever they talk, I don't know Spanish, so like whenever they talk, I can understand when they're talking to their family. Or sometimes they talk amongst themselves and they talk to me, like they'll say something, a general question, and I'll respond, right? Like I maybe can't respond in Creole, but I can understand. But like I only know the petty stuff. So sometimes I piss one of them off on purpose, obviously, by like bringing up all of the like petty stuff that I've learned.
What's the petty word? You gotta drop one down.
My friend taught me how to say tomate Jocelyn dans toute sauce, or like it's like, so basically I'm telling my friend that she's like a tomato trying to be in every sauce. So it's just like you're trying to like be everywhere, because she gets major FOMO. So whenever she gets like that, I just remind her.
That's so funny.
Anyways, random. We like totally sidetracked that conversation, but Logan, but I just had to insert because like my love for Haitian folks is strong. So I knew there was a connection. I knew there was a connection. I also, a lot of what you were talking about, Naomieh, and like even just your, when I saw your photos the first time, it really stood out to me. The way that you were like the models were positioned, or that the way that you were capturing the body, right? Like I'm doing this because I'm thinking about like that picture where like the figures are like bent over and like kind of contorted, and like there's like this rawness to it, and like even just like the space, right? Like it's just the space. It feels like vast, and also like at times clinical. It's weird, like, and in such a like it's such a visceral way. And I relate a lot to how you use photography, right, as a way to like confront something that made you fearful, or that once at some point had power over you, and how you use that like as it's like you're challenging yourself to move past that, right? And I think that's such a powerful way to use photography, and that's such a powerful way to use your medium. And there's just like the amount of feeling behind it, at least when I first saw the photography that was included in the show, that it hit me. I was like, oh, I feel like I found another photographer that uses this medium for like a very similar purpose, even though our stories are obviously like vastly different, and like our experiences are vastly different, and and yet like there's some, maybe not healing, but like some resolution or some processing that has happened in the making, or in the capturing of these bodies, right? Because I'm also thinking about like my mom's Mexican, my dad's Honduran, and like I'm also thinking about, and it's something that I relate with a lot with Caribbean folks, whether from Spanish speaking countries, or like I feel like I think like Haitian folks are like, and it's like part of being a part of that like Caribbean. There's a lot of cultural similarities that I experience in terms of how I was raised, and how I was taught to perceive my body, etc. That I've learned from my housemates, right? Like we talk about our experiences being raised, and they're actually more similar than what you would think, considering that the cultures seem different, but they're not, right? Like, so they those lands like are were as colonized as Mexico were, and so I think a lot of that like colonizer mentality like crosses over, and it filters the way that we perceive our bodies, right? So on top of all of the added trauma, like there's that thing that we already inherited, right? That was passed down, that was internalized, that was given by the colonizer to you know be in discord with our own bodies, to be at odds with our own bodies, to have awful relationships with our own bodies. And I learned that from my mom. I learned that from the other people in my family, like and like the ability now to like challenge those things, those ideals or those values or those mindsets through my work is been a gift in many ways, right? Like I feel like who I am now after like having photographed is different, and I'm still working, I'm still photographing, I'm still doing the things. But anyways, that was I kind of like went in loops, but I was really resonating with a lot what you were saying, Naomieh, and I really appreciate that, and Chantal obviously for bringing forward that quote that made us all think about this.
Something, Candy, that you wrote in one of your poems was, I feel winded by the challenge of looking at you and learning to see you for you, and not the heaviness that your uncensored gaze holds. Which first off is just beautiful. And really, yeah, just I feel like just really there's something you're so sensitive and attuned to, and the way you're able to express it so clearly in poetry is amazing.
Can you read it one more time so I can just hear it again?
Yeah. Do you want to say it, Candy?
It up because I'm gonna pull it up because believe it or not, like I don't I don't remember any of that. It's just been so long. But I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah. Okay, I can read it. Oh Lord, I feel winded by the challenge of looking at you and learning to see you for you and not the heaviness that your uncensored gaze holds.
One more time, please.
Girl, we gotta move on. Okay, no. If you want to see it, it'll be on the Instagram until March 9th. No, no, like I brought it up because it made me think about the work that Brianna does with Starfruit Project, which yeah, I guess I don't know if everyone here knows about it, but Brianna, do you want to talk about that project a little bit?
Sure. It is the Starfruit Project is a platform highlighting I haven't said it in so long. I'm like, whoa. Radical healing and creativity for radical healing and brilliant growth. That's where it came from. Found it. And it has, I started it. I'm like trying to remember timeline. Time in my brain is like so scrambled right now. I started it after dropping out of grad school while being investigated for racism. It was a good time. And I kind of started to find all the threads throughout all the different work that I was doing as like an educator, as a theater maker, my own like writing practice. And I was like, and even like some community organizing. And I was like, oh, I just like want to make spaces for queer and trans people of color to heal in all these different ways. And I was like, I'm just going to put it all together and start a thing. So that's kind of like where it came from, and specifically using writing and theater and performance as a tool for healing and growth. So I've been doing some things. There's an Instagram, there's a website, there's some blog posts, interviews with Black, queer, and trans artists. I've done a couple of showcases and events through that lens. And yeah, just like kind of creating space for people to explore themselves. Like, I don't know, literally do what all of y'all are doing. Do what y'all are doing. And like, I think because I had been in so many white spaces that, like even as a kid where I was like, oh, singing makes me feel good, but like I can't really do that here because you don't see me. I like literally am in the back and you don't even see that I exist. So it's like I don't really I know that that theater and writing are powerful tools for me, but I can't really access them because I'm this invisible Black queer person in the back. So I just wanted to create space for people to be able to tap into those things.
Yeah, something I really like about it is like on the Instagram, like you have like these kind of writing prompts. Like just like at any moment you could just be confronted with something where you're just like, yeah, let me just take the time and actually like think about this. Or I feel like maybe the first time I don't know if we met, but the the Arts Noir Fest that WIT would have at the Rotunda. And you had like just pieces of paper that had just like affirmations on it for people to take or write down for themselves or write down and leave for someone else to pick up. Just thought that was so nice.
They're all in my closet now because, you know, sometimes I like open up the bag and I'm like, what do I do with all this stuff? All these papers and writing prompts and stuff that, you know, live in my closet now.
One day.
I'm not feeling hopeful, but that's okay. Now it's just online.
Yeah.
Online.
Logan, was you're bringing up Brianna's work with Starfruit, in relation to the uncensored gay, or like I'm curious the connection.
Oh yeah. Like I think
Thank
like
you for asking.
I'm just roping it back in, just roping it back in.
Yeah, like I think to create is to have a relationship with yourself in a way that you may not have outside of like a creative act, right? Like to write, to journal, to do poetry, to take like self-portraits, which are different than a selfie. I feel like I think when I read what Candy wrote, it really just makes me think about like the discomfort we can have just being alone by ourselves, like to really like look at yourself. Like it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror, like really like in the eyeball. That's hard. And I think it's hard to also just like creatively engage yourself in your own feelings where you are in that moment, right? To not say, well, you know, I'll start journaling like next month or something, but to really just in that moment just be with yourself. And I feel like the work that Brianna does like open up that space and like allow people to do that, to have those kind of confrontations, either with themselves or like as you're saying with the oh, you need to read that out loud because people who are not seeing the chat are going to be confused. What was I saying?
Go on, Logan. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. So either having that conversation with yourself or with an audience, right? Like I think that's also like a really great thing too, is to be able to like share yourself openly with an audience. I want to start to wind down a bit. And the question I kind of have for everyone now is just to talk a little bit about influence and deconsecration, what those things kind of mean for you. Are those words, having seen the show, do they mean anything differently to you? Are you seeing things in a new way, or just in your life and in your practice, how do you understand those things? And I think I ask that because I think artists have like very strong and like personal lenses into certain topics, and we don't always really get to hear them actually like kind of share their philosophy, you know, like in a way where we really honor it outside of just like aesthetics, right? Like just like what you all say and think is just as valuable as like what you produce, right? So I want to open that up, whoever wants to go first, or I will start picking people to talk about what those themes and those words mean to you.
Yeah, I can go. You know, now that you've brought that awareness to me of, you know, what deconsecration is, I plan to continue to obviously, you know, work in that way, but to with the knowledge of that word and like using that intentionally, I feel like, you know, when I think of influence, everything we do, like all of our behaviors, all the things we do, there's like a purpose behind that, right? Whether we know it or not. And you know, in my trauma informed practice, like I've learned to think of the fact that if I don't know the reason for something that I do or something that another person does, like a behavior or something, or an action or whatever, then I haven't dug deep enough, right? And so one of my challenges to myself through my work is to continue to dig deep, right? And see where the root is, and find that spot. And then, you know, in finding that, then it will allow me to really continue this work of deconsecration that I've been doing for a while, you know. You know, so that I can become like a more at peace, somewhat freer human, and that's really important to me, that now that I have this newfound awareness, right, through this experience, through the show and with you all, that I can actually just continue to do this work, but with a greater like sense of like intention, or because that awareness, like, and have being able to use things more intentionally, like that can be very powerful, right? Sometimes we do things intuitively, and we just, because we, like, our body knows how to heal, our body knows what it needs to accomplish and get done in order to process and move forward. But when you do it with intention and when you do it with awareness, it's a whole other ball game. So yeah,
that's really great.
I can go because I feel like if I don't, I'm just gonna be very anxious. I don't know if this happens to anyone, but you're like, I know what I want to say, but I don't know, and then things keep adding, and then I know I'm gonna forget, and now I'm stressed. So I already feel like I have like 5 things in my brain. And I do feel stressed, but it's okay. I think I don't know, for me, it's like, I think of a starting point. I'm like, let me start the story here. And then I'm like, wait, no, sooner, like go back further. Where I think I want to start is that I've done theater forever, and I used to write as a kid and like journal and like write stories, and I kind of stopped. And throughout college, I was doing this work of like creating, I was a director of a Black theater company on campus. So I was kind of like creating space for other people, other Black people, to tell their stories in various ways, but I wasn't actually sharing anything. And for whatever reason, like a month after I graduated, my brain was like, okay, start writing. And so I started writing things that I was sharing with other people in theater performances and other things. And it was all like about trauma, which was very like cathartic for me at the time, but also just like really heavy. And I think one of the hardest things, this is like, so Unbox is one of the pieces, like the beginning and the end of Unbox it was like an hour-long solo show that I wrote. It was like really hard to write. And then I performed it. And then like I was performing it in a festival while I was like being investigated for racism, like being pushed out of my grad program. It was fun. So there's like a lot going on. And I was like it was a lot because I was like, oh, I have to like commit to my art. So like even the act of performing this piece in a festival, I was like losing it because I was like, oh, I have to revisit this. Like it was about trauma. A lot of it was like about trauma and like things that I had experienced. And I think like the trauma around my sexuality and understanding who I was and how that was also related to sexual violence and all of that. So it was like really, really heavy for me to continue to revisit. And then I was like feeling horrible about myself. I was like, I don't know my lines. I'm supposed to go on stage. If you look at any pictures of me, I read it. I like printed it out and read it out of a book because I like couldn't memorize it because it was just like too much for me. And I think so, but like shortly after that, I moved to Philly and started doing comedy. And I think it kind of like the comedy allowed me to be like, okay, I can still like talk about, like the patriarchy and depression. I have another sketch that I wrote about like the vegetables, like dancing vegetables curing depression. I can still write about all these things without it being as heavy and as hard to like process. And I think I kind of got to a point where I was like, oh, I have like the only way for me to to heal is to like put all of my trauma on stage and like force myself to talk about it in public and like all of these things. And that was really hard for me. So comedy kind of like gave me an out of like, not an out. Comedy, I think, showed me like an alternative to like, okay, I can, there's another way for me to process or like find joy or create in a way that's not as like really, really hard. And I think kind of the play that I mentioned, it's not in the show, but I did write a play last year that was again based on my experience being investigated for racism. I did write about this. If anyone wants to read it, it's my Medium. But I basically wrote a play that was like inspired by that. But and as I was reading it, I was like, this is so heavy and like I just can't. So I ended up making it a comedy, while still having that be like the seed that like launches the whole thing, is that this character is being investigated for racism at her job, and that's where the piece started. But it ultimately is a comedy about like a Black queer chosen family. Anyway, so I felt like I was like able to take something really terrible, and I still like released the report, and I still wrote an article about it. So you know, it's not like this like and or like when I have to choose one or the other. It's like I can still tell that whole story and put it out and on the like put that whole story out, while also being like, okay, I don't have to relay this story in my art piece by piece or like rehash it over in the exact way for it to be a meaningful like transformation or transmutation or whatever like of my experience, and I can make it into something that is going to make people laugh and feel good and feel like warm and cozy and fuzzy and all of that. So anyway, I feel and I think I also like I thank you, Logan, for this opportunity, because I definitely feel I emailed you, but I was like, I feel very like validated, and I think it was such a weird experience to go from. I know I'm talking a lot. It's such a weird experience to go from like I did the show, I co-directed the show when I was in at the University of Texas at Austin. That's the place. And they and I co-directed the show called Rage to Heal, where I just got a bunch of Black people together, and I was like, put it on the page, and then we're gonna perform it. Like, write whatever making you angry. And it was like, you know, it was great, necessary, and all of those things. And I think it was really powerful to not feel like because I'm doing comedy and making people laugh that like that doesn't have to be the standard for my work, or like that doesn't have to be all of my work. Like I can still step away from that and have it still be impactful and powerful and meaningful, and the joy is just as important as processing the rage, and it doesn't have to be like, even when you asked me to do this, I was like, do I have anything like serious? I was like, I have a sketch about Hades. Running gender reveals, does that count? Anyway, I feel like there's a lot of levels that the deconsecration in my like work is. There's like levels to it. So anyway, thank you for listening, everyone.
Yeah, it's like even on the level of like what form to take, it's just like it could be this, but it also could be this, and it could be influenced by this, but it doesn't have to be that. Like, yeah, that kind of like it doesn't have to be is like so powerful.
And I think it's, I'm sorry, like wait, I also like the unboxed piece, like the first thing that came to my mind when you like mentioned this to me was this part of Unboxed when I performed it at this festival in Austin, was that I read this letter that I had written to this person who had harmed me, and I like during the actual show I was like, I don't need to read this whole thing, I can, you know, I don't need to say this again. And then after I just like ripped it up, and I still have a copy because it was like a printed copy, but I still have the original one. But like I like ripped it up and like through it, and I was like, oh, that feels like that to me like embodies this theme of like I had this thing that obviously I'm still holding on to, but like you know, in this performance I was able to be like, like this whole relationship, like I've allowed it to be to like have this power over me, or to be this like holy thing, and now I'm just like and then I felt like I had to share that story, and I had to share the backstory, and I was like freaking out, and Logan's like, where's the stuff? And I'm like, I can't, I'm like revisiting this piece and it's so hard. And then Logan was like, you don't have to do this. And I was like, you're right. And I think that was really important, like that speaks to the layers of it, because it was like I was making that that part of my life, like this specific trauma that's part of this play, that's part of this experience I had doing the performance, you know, that's already like 3 levels. And I was just like, you know, putting that on such a pedestal that I was like, I have to tell the people that this thing you know, I'm doing it right now, but like you know, I was like, I felt like I had to share that whole story, and like because I was giving it so much power, but it's like that doesn't like define my work or define me. So I appreciate you being like, stop and calm down.
Anytime.
You're embodying the practice of making people powerful. I'm done.
Who wants to go next?
Naomieh, you go.
This is how I know you've been around Haitians. Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot. Nah, you got it.
I'm more interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
We'll be here for like 5 hours because I talk in circles.
Do you want me to ask you just like a quick, let me just ask you a quick, what do you think, this is for Naomieh, what do you think influences you the most? I'm going to say not even in your artwork, just in your life.
That's a hard question.
Sure is.
What influences me the most in my life?
Mm-hmm.
My work? Or no, that's not the answer. That was a question. Like me in regards to making work, or me as a person?
I guess whichever one feels more interesting to you.
And this is being recorded. I feel like I don't know what inspires me. I think what inspires me, okay, I think I know. I can give you an idea. I think that I am determined to break whatever is holding me hostage emotionally, mentally, physically, if that makes sense, because I'm still in the house that I experienced everything that is trying to kill me, and I don't know, I don't know. I know there's a way out, but I'm trying to, it's not there. And I guess, I don't know. I'm just I inspire myself. I know I can be better and have the life that I want and be who I want to be. I'm just trying to get my body to follow that, get my mind to follow that. Yeah. To keep it short. Oh, I just saw that. Yeah. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad you went. Oh, and good question, Logan. Like really honing it in there. That was nice and painful. I wanted everyone else to go first because I really love hearing you all talk. I just and I know there was conversation about circular talking, and I talk in circles. It's actually, we don't pay. I thought about that the whole time we're talking in circles, because we don't pay a lot of attention often to the fact that the opposite of that is this assumption of linear thinking, which is a very dominant culture model, that you have an argument, you've laid it out in this way, and you say it, and you nail it at the end, and there's no other debate to happen. And it's this very 5-paragraph essay way of we're kind of taught from a young age to assume somebody knows what they're saying, or that we have to know what we're saying before we say it. And if there's anything that art offers, anything that work like this offers, is come as you are. You know, you don't actually have to know what you're saying. Just be here and talk it out with us. And maybe together we can actually figure out what's happening on some level and find different questions than coming at it, having done our homework in some way or something. I think it's so refreshing because, you know, a lot of us, it sounds like we've been through some form of academia, and that's its own form of influence, that we're all in some way, you know, which itself, I mean, if you want to go down that route, academia is influenced by the church and by varying churches and varying dominant, you know, colonial models.
What?
Oh my Lord. You didn't know.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about this later because I know that's gonna be a whole other.
It's a whole other thing. Anyways,
okay.
yeah. But to talk about influence and deconsecration, for me, it's a thing that, well, everyone, the through lines I've been hearing, it's making me think a lot about evolution, because I'm a bit of an evolution brat. I study a lot of evolutionary theory, and I'm very interested in how the rest of life figures this out. And they're not writing philosophy books, they're not making art, but other life forms seem to be living. You know, they seem to be going about the thing of living. And I'm so interested in, and so what I've come to understand from evolution is that it's a process of deconsecration, and it's a process of, it's its own deconsecrated process. Because if you think about it, what Darwin interpreted and a lot of evolutionary theorists interpreted as evolutionary selection, of natural selection and fitness, those are very like myopic human terms. The reality is actually, it's an attunement to what can actually function together, and and you deconsecrate something by saying, oh, we don't need that anymore. And it's so Darwin, thank you, that was the goal. So Darwin didn't actually intend for survival of the fittest to be the thing that outlived him. He was more interested in the cooperation of a species. That was actually, if he were to like be alive now and see what happened to his work, he would be appalled. He saw life as being quite cooperative because it didn't need to be. And how what we do as varying species, because it's not just one species, is that we're trying constantly, and us as humans in particular, we become very aware of our own influence over our evolution. Culture, religion, dominant modes of thinking actually channel our species. And so when you have a bodies like ours, bodies of color, even that term is an arbitrary distinction that creates its own evolutionary selection. It puts pressure on parts of our species to be more stressed, to be more depressed, to be more oppressed, to be broken in these ways. It makes it harder for us to survive. And we have agency now. And so for me, deconsecration is a matter of doing that natural process, that evolutionary process of saying, here's where the influence came from. We no longer need this anymore. I need new things to be influenced by in order to evolve in another direction. You know, and that's the ultimate kind of goal, to heal and to really just evolve, you know, to live, so we can just be like sea urchins or I don't know. Anyways, that's my philosophy that you asked for, Logan. You got it.
Thank you.
That's why I wanted to go last, because it's a little preachy.
That was perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone. I mean, I'm so in awe of all of you. Like, truly, I admire you all so much. And thank you for, girl, stop. Thank you for for participating and agreeing to do this talk and sharing your work with other people. Well, I guess we're wrapping up here. I'm not sure how to end the recording.
Is there a record button at the bottom?
No. I mean, like, how to end, like.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were having technical difficulty.
Okay, I'll just find some place to just stop it.
You wave like.
Oh yeah, should we?
Thanks for watching. Check out the gallery. Follow us on Instagram.
You sound like you did this before.